Bethesda has achieved a milestone thought to be impossible. Starfield Shattered Space is so bad, even Yong can't shill for it.
So Starfield came out about a year ago, and a lot of people are waiting to see if this game can make a comeback. It's not that it was
No one was waiting to see if this game can make a comeback. Everyone knew it's impossible.
this complete and utter flop. Like, it's still
It was a complete and utter flop, in fact.
sold well enough, and
we don't know if it even sold good well enough, because most people who are playing Starfield did so from the Game Pass.
a lot of people play the game, but there's this general sentiment that Starfield, as far as Bethesda single-player games go, it's among the more underwhelming ones that they have made. The idea of a sci-fi...
Okay, maybe I was wrong. Young's still trying his best to say Starfield good. Everyone is wrong.
Sort of space-themed Bethesda game seemed cool at first until people realized how that diminished the traditional exploration of Bethesda games, where it felt like one cohesive, unified world instead of a world that was split into a bunch of pieces and then spread out across.
Now, first of all, no pieces were spread out around. It was all just AI-generated garbage. That's one. Two, turns out Starfield did not hamper Bethesda's creativity in the slightest. Because from Starfield Shattered Space, we know that if Bethesda makes handcrafted locations, they're as slop as AI-generated ones. So technically, nothing has changed.
Planets that you have to fast travel to, so there's just a lot of loading times in between. And with how much space they had to fill because they had all of these planets, and the world was now not just a world, but a whole freaking galaxy, there was a lot of procedural generation, so...
Calling it a freaking galaxy is just so absolutely bad fate lying. It's insane.
A lot of less handcrafted stuff, or at least the handcrafted stuff was so much more dispersed and kind of diluted by the procedurally generated stuff. And people, I think, began to kind of get a sense of how Bethesda's kind of game design is starting to become outdated.
He's struggling so hard right now to not just say Starfield is shit, and it's always going to be shit. There's nothing to be done about it. It's over.
What Bethesda did before, in terms of how they've really revolutionized or kind of set the standard for open world games, now other studios have come out and done better. And Bethesda's falling behind on that front. And so a lot of people are waiting to see if Shattered Space would start to show some signs of hope that maybe this game can course correct and bring people...
No. I really don't think anyone expected Shattered Space to magically save Starfield. It was pretty clear that that's not going to happen.
Back to the idea that Bethesda can maybe start keeping up with some of these other more compelling open world experiences. But Shattered Space, the expansion for the first expansion for Starfield, it currently hasn't gone down super well. The reception surrounding it has been fairly lukewarm. First,
reception against this thing is, as you can see here, mostly negative. It's not warm at all. Everyone hates it.
First of all, critically speaking,
and those who don't hate it, I question your sanity.
If we look at Steam reviews, you can see that users are rating it mostly negative. It just got a 30% review score from over 2,300 reviews. The amount of reviews are currently fairly small. It's not
gonna change because everyone interested in this piece of garbage has already called it garbage, so it's not changing anytime soon. It's gonna be like the base game of Starfield. People are wondering why was Starfield's reviews just slowly slipping more and more into the negative? Well, because all the fanboys are out. Every person who bought Starfield at the launch and thought it's gonna be shit has already reviewed it. And at this point, only normal people who have no idea that these videos on the internet even exist are trying Shattered Space because they're like, oh, wow, space exploration planets, that sounds good. And they play it and it's a disappointment. And they leave a negative review because most people are sane enough, smart enough, reasonable enough to look at Starfield and just instantaneously call it dog water.
Not as big as you might think for a major DLC for a major Bethesda game. And so that already shows signs that, I mean, people who play it are not super digging it. And then a lot of people actually aren't really even buying this DLC. They've kind of tapped out.
He's trying so hard to not say anything bad.
And given the reception,
Bethesda, give this man a raise. He's trying so hard.
surrounding it hasn't been amazing. It seems as though people who are waiting or who are on the fence are saying, okay, so, you know, I wasn't super into Starfield before. This is not going to be the thing that brings me back, so I'm going to skip it. But it's not just Steam players who feel this way about the DLC, about just the lukewarm nature of it overall, despite some cool elements that they showed off during marketing. Ultimately, this is a DLC that got
what cool elements did they show off via marketing? I'm confused. Did we see the same marketing? Because I didn't see a single element that they wanted to show off through marketing. They just wanted to be as cryptic as possible to not give away anything about the game, because they knew that if people knew more, they would not even buy it to this minimum level that they have.
God, that is currently sitting at a 58 Metascore from 13 critic reviews. The user score here is fairly close to that, so a lot of people agree with the overall critical reception. And there's just this element of like, this is just more Starfield, and it doesn't really push the boundaries forward much. It introduces some new elements that are not utilized as much as they should, but overall,
what new elements? I really want him to actually explain a single new element that this game introduces. Now, to be fair, there is like an anti-gravity. There's a couple of anti-gravity zones that you can traverse through, but that's pretty much it. Honestly, beyond that, and even that is kind of lukewarm at best. I can't even think of a single new element that this expansion adds.
they don't add enough content. The campaign is relatively short. The story is fine, but it doesn't really do enough to make up for all the areas where...
No, the story is absolutely abysmal. The story is stupid. The story is lackluster. It's generic as you could get, and it's overall just completely sad.
This DLC is lacking content-wise, and it just, among the big single-player DLC...
When you enter this DLC, in the first 2 minutes of playing it, you're effectively, who's this outsider that we don't know of? Maybe we should shoot him. And then 30 seconds later, you are the chosen one. We all bow to the chosen one. That's right, it's that bad. It is that sad.
That Bethesda has made, there's this general sentiment that Shattered Space is actually among the more underwhelming ones, despite some of the amazing vistas that this game provides, some of the aesthetic elements that are really cool. It really just doesn't add enough or overhaul the game enough. It's certainly no Phantom Liberty. What that?
Oh, shut up, dude. I can't just wrap my head around the people who saying, oh, some vistas look really good in this game. Oh, have you tried looking into the red-hued space? It's really good looking. Bro, making a good looking space screen is so easy, AI literally never fails at it. Okay, it's not complicated. I wouldn't even expect Starfield to fail something as simple as making a space scene where you look into space and you see planet and it kind of looks cool.
That was to Cyberpunk 2077, where it really felt chonky. And we're looking at a DLC for Starfield that is $30. That the price point just doesn't feel justified based on the kind of relatively shorter campaign, based on some of the technical issues that people have encountered, and based on just a lack of substantial additional content and compelling design for just the exploration and certain quests and dungeons that should have felt maybe a little less of the typical kind of boring affair that has made the reception what it is now. And so if we look at how many people are actually engaging with Starfield now post DLC launch, you can see that while these numbers are certainly not bad, especially for a single player,
these numbers are extremely horrible. Starfield before Shattered Space was averaging like 6 to 8k players a day, which is technically not bad if we're talking about anything other than a Bethesda game, technically, but for a Bethesda game, it's horrible. It's freaking horrible. Okay? And when the DLC launched, its peak was 20k. 20k, just 20k. That is the worst. That is probably the worst DLC launch in decades. In goddamn decades from a AAA studio.
Player game. It pales in comparison to results we've seen from past Bethesda games, and it pales in comparison to other games whose DLCs have caused a massive influx of players. So right here we have a 24-hour peak of 18,762 players as of today, but you'll see that the most we saw from the Shattered Space DLC launch on Steam was a peak of over almost 22,000 players, 21,792 players to be specific. That is an uptick of, roughly 10,000, 6 to 10,000 players from the months prior. Which is, it's certainly more players, but not by like a significant.
This is literally 1 in 10 people who play this game at launch. And keep in mind, again, game was free if you had the Xbox Game Pass. And you got the DLC for free if you got it with the Deluxe Edition. Okay? And this expansion barely breaches 20k. That is insane. That is just the saddest thing ever. This is a disaster.
Significant amount, at least what you'd expect the influx to be for a game of this kind. So to give you some context, Cyberpunk 2077, when the DLC for that launched, when Phantom Liberty launched for that game, the influx was tremendous. So you can see right here that Cyberpunk 2077 dipped into sort of the 30,000-ish players, and then as soon as the DLC came out, the peaks went as high as 274,000.
Yeah. A little bit more than 1/4 of the players returned. In Starfield's case, 6% of the player base that originally played this game roughly returned for the DLC. Okay? No way. No way. Bethesda just literally spent probably 100 million and got back like maybe 2 million of their investment with this DLC. It is crazy.
526 players. It also,
and I wouldn't be surprised if a company as inept as Bethesda would come out and say, well, the Starfield DLC cost 150 million to make, which was ludicrous. Like, even for a DLC this large, I would say that even 100 million honestly is kind of completely batshit insane. But again, it's Bethesda. Ineptitude at its finest.
Help that, cross-media stuff.
Todd Howard starts every day at Bethesda headquarters by giving a speech how being 5'4" on stilts is still very, very good for being a man, and it's not short in the slightest, and everyone who disagrees is going to be sent to the pits.
Like the Cyberpunk anime, that all of that kind of came together to create this massive influx of interest for the IP, but ultimately it also helped that Phantom Liberty was just deemed to be a really good DLC that felt chunky and substantial in its content, whose price point felt justified. It's worth noting that Phantom Liberty's price point was also $30, but it felt like it had far more. You got so much more bang for your buck with Phantom Liberty in terms of how and what it did for the game as a whole, including the base game and all of the.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if people who liked Phantom Liberty would just say, "Yeah, I would pay 40 or 50 bucks for this. It was worth it."
Free updates that came out for that leading up to Phantom Liberty, combined with.
Now, obviously, boys, remember this: whenever anyone says, how much are you willing to pay for a game? You say zero, nothing, $1. No. Definitely never paying anything. You do not gain anything by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm willing to pay $50 for a DLC. I'm willing to pay $70 for a game." Hell no, you don't. You get nothing. You should not do it. And and if you do, you should feel bad about yourself.
With how substantial that campaign and all of the side missions felt, and it really, and obviously it took a lot more time with Phantom Liberty, but maybe Bethesda should have done the same for Shattered Space to really give this strong impression that there is hope for a comeback on the horizon. A lot of people, I think, were looking towards the first DLC to see what the direction of Starfield would be like. And it feels like so far, Starfield is like, it's not a failure, but it's just the reception surrounding it is so lukewarm.
Oh god. Oh god. Is this video sponsored by Bethesda? Doesn't look like it. Doesn't have the sponsor tag, but man, I would not be surprised. Oh man, Yong, yeah, is trying his utmost hardest here to keep that the Elder Scrolls 6 early access for himself as much as possible. Oh man, he's trying really hard.
Compared to what you'd expect for a Bethesda game, that by Bethesda standards, it feels like it just fell short, and it feels like it's an experiment that ultimately failed. Like, they went for this new IP, but the format of space exploration that they went with and how that ruined the open world exploration that they're known for, because everything's so fragmented now and divided by loading screens, that I think especially really negatively impacted the experience. Now,
no, the loading screens aren't even honestly the issue. It's the issue that you have. The average person who plays Starfield is going to very quickly understand, unless they master fast travel, which is 3 loading screens. The average person is going to get 5 to 6 loading screens when they want to jump from a planet to a different location. Oh boy, it's going to be rough.
With Shattered Space, they tried to course correct. Shattered Space takes place in just one planet with one big map and area. It's more of like a traditional Bethesda style open world.
Yeah, and it's as boring as the AI generated slop.
But the problem is that it is still among the less compelling new areas that they've added to a game through DLC, because the exploration just isn't rewarding in terms of what you find and the amount of content that they've added to the game. Not to say it's all bad. There are a few.
Okay, I have to ask this at this point. Have you noticed how hard Yong is trying to not say the word bad? Bethesda bad, Shattered Space bad, Starfield bad. Okay, he can't even say, "Oh yeah, the DLC is bad because the new location is bad." No. He needs to say, "Well, the new location is kind of underwhelming compared to other DLC locations that we have seen." Oh my god.
Few compelling quests here and there, and you do get a full-fledged campaign, but it feels more like a faction quest that should have been in the base game, is I think one way to put it, maybe. Instead of
You get a full-fledged campaign here, but it feels like a faction quest, not actual DLC. Okay.
it feeling like a chonky expansion. And so, yeah, the player base of Starfield didn't grow substantially, which means a lot of people probably didn't buy this DLC, which doesn't bode well for future support for Starfield. Like, it's possible that Bethesda might wind down on Starfield expansions, because they might look at results for Shattered Space and see that financially it's just not viable to keep investing in the game.
No, they're just gonna double down and say that the fans are just racists and bigots and homophobes and Nazis and misogynists and all of those things. You know, it's my favorite thing. It's the Joker too. Honestly, the fact that the media can't use the fact that the fans are racist because the 2 leads are white people. I can't. Shit, we can't use racists now. What do we do now? It's so good.
Game, or at least not as much as they'd like. So they might just move on and onto Elder Scrolls 6, which is their next big major project. And then,
and as again, we have talked about this a lot, but yeah, dude. But Starfield just came out. There were so many comments just on my videos saying, "Yeah, I'm not hyped for Elder Scrolls 6 after seeing what Starfield delivered on, aka nothing." And now that the expansion hit it, Bethesda literally still can't provide any substance that people would actually want from a game. So many people are now completely just not interested in Elder Scrolls 6 any longer because they expect failure. I expect also failure because again, same engine that Starfield is going to be built on, aka the game's going to look 20 years outdated already, and the same actors, the same people, literally the same team that made Starfield is now going to make Elder Scrolls 6. It's gonna be bad. There's no way. Even the same person who made the Starfield story is gonna make the story for Elder Scrolls 6. It's not gonna be.
That is further reinforced by the fact that if you look at, the most played games on Xbox and the like, so right here, most played games on Xbox from the Microsoft official website, you can see that despite the launch of the DLC, Starfield is still all the way down here. It is 26th place in terms of most played games on Xbox, and it is beaten out by titles.
No one cares about what you can play or not play on Xbox. Like, come on. Oh, look at that. He shows Skyrim. Yeah, look at this. This is currently Skyrim's numbers. And you know why this is going slightly up? Because people are playing Shattered Space and they're like, man, Bethesda dropped the ball. And then they're playing Skyrim to think, wait, maybe Bethesda's games were always that bad, so let me just boot up and play Skyrim a little bit to see maybe I don't like Skyrim anymore because turns out Bethesda games were always trash. And they probably find out, no, Skyrim's a decent game. Not the best one out in the universe, but still a decent and playable game. No, Bethesda just now is shit. And that's pretty much the end of the story. Anyway, Young, I don't want to listen to you try and say Starfield not bad while it's clearly bad. Well, let's do the Yong out
Right here on Yong. Yeah.
Yong, yeah.
I'll see you guys next time.
Next time. Yong out.
Yong out.
Woo! Beautiful. Anyway, bye-bye.